Alrighty. Hope everyone's doing well. We're going to give it a couple minutes for everyone to start funneling in, so thank you all for your patience. Jimmy, we probably should have invested in some background music just to have something flowing.
Yeah, that's right
Yeah.
too.
Elevator music or something,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I'd hum something, but I'm not very good at it. So
Yeah, I was gonna ask if Craig could
yeah.
hum us a couple bars or sing us like maybe a 3.5 minute song or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we might start losing people if I did that.
All right, everyone, we'll give it another 2 minutes and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay.
All right, I think we're getting pretty close to a quorum here, so I think now's a good time to go ahead and get started. Can Jimmy, real quick, can you see that screen okay? Is that coming through for everybody?
Yeah. Yeah, I can.
Okay, fantastic. So I'll go ahead and get it started then. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Water Automation Think Tank. Super happy to have everybody here. For those who are new, a quick word on what this forum's all about. The think tank is a customer-led collaborative space where water and wastewater utilities come together to share experiences, learn from peers, and have an open, candid conversations about the challenges you're actually facing in your operations. We run this quarterly, and every session is driven by what matters most to you. Before we dive in, I do want to touch on a couple of ground rules to keep everything running smoothly. We want this to be interactive, so please don't be shy. Drop your thoughts, questions, comments in the chat at any time, and we'll be keeping an eye on it throughout. Additionally, if you want to speak up during our open roundtable discussion, we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to come off mute and join the roundtable. That being said, if you're not speaking, just if you could stay on mute just so we can keep the background noise down for everybody, it'll help keep the conversation flowing. We're going to kick things off. Well, we got a couple of things lined up today. We're going to kick things off with a Velotic product update with Jimmy Felice. Craig Brubaker from Orange County Utilities will walk us through our feature presentation today on using AI to increase operational resilience. After that, we'll open it up to a roundtable discussion focused on analytics and AI. That will be meant for a more real conversation where we'd love for everybody who'd like to engage to jump in. And then we'll close out with an Ask the Expert segment with our iFix team. So definitely start thinking about what questions that you have for them now. So that's everything from me. I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Jimmy Felice to go ahead and get things started.
Right. Let me just grab the share from you and sorry for the logistics here. Here we go. So I hope everybody loves our new orange colors. As part of our change to Velotic, which is kicked off this month. So you'll start seeing a little more of that. So as Tanner mentioned, today what I'm going to do is a bit of a product update, and then we'll hear from Craig, and then just pick a topic and see if anyone wants to talk to some roundtable topics, and then, as he mentioned, the Ask the Expert. So I'm just going to go through these fairly briefly and give a pause at the end. If somebody does have any questions, you can either enter it in the chat or come off mute and ask as well. But I'll kind of get things started with the Cimplicity 2026 release. So we do have some 2026 releases coming this summer. So this is just a bit of a preview of what is in some of these releases. For Cimplicity, we do have some performance improvements around things like our viewer. We've created now an alternative to UDP, and the main reason this is important is it really provides a lot more flexibility for any of our Cimplicity users out there. It does provide flexibility in not using the broadcast, which also means you can have servers at different locations across networks, that type of thing, as it becomes IP based. The original UDP is still there, but it does add this as an option. Something else we've added recently is redundancy used to be limited to single project servers. It is now also available for redundant systems as well. So you can have a redundant servers with multiple projects running on them. We have added model import export to work with our new data hub, which you'll hear a bit more about next month, so I won't give away too much, but basically where you can have an enterprise level model, the Cimplicity server will interact with that enterprise model as well. Just providing the ability to manage system or manage your model across multiple servers. A really cool new capability with the system that has been added is the ability to what we call do an active update. And really what that means is being able to do things like upgrade the software version, change the OS, do project changes. If you're doing more than just smaller incremental changes, you might be doing larger project changes. You can actually now do these without shutting the system down. It allows you to stage a I'll call it a test server. And then when lets you test the test server, and when everything's ready with the click of a button, it'll allow you to convert the test server to the production server. Really either eliminating or really reducing the downtime when you are doing major upgrades. We also have done several alarm enhancements. These include include some new APIs as well that you can do from the scripting, as well as a major one, which is alarm shelving. So that's something that was done more manually using the scripts in the past. This is now, the features now baked into the product. So, definitely something that's important in terms of alarm management, reducing alarm noise and things like that as well. And then we're also working towards having an aggregated alarm service at the higher level, where you can actually see alarms across multiple systems a lot more easily. And this is something that has been, as hopefully everyone knows, there is an ideas portal on our support page where you can go in and add requests for different capabilities, and this is one of the top ones that was voted on over the last couple of years type of thing. So we do look at that regularly. I did talk to this one, the active update. I won't go into too much detail, but the concepts you see here is where you can have a production and test system and then have a switch between them. Just so when you're doing your test server, you can actually put some of the clients onto the test server so you can test out the system, and then eventually when you commit those changes, it'll swap everything over to the test server over to the production server. So again, this is just something that really helps in terms of reducing downtime, helps you keep up to date. I know that we may introduce SIMs or that new version, and you're like, wow, I don't really have time to do this. This should, I can't afford the downtime. This should help in many of those scenarios. As mentioned, we also have the alarm shelving. What this allows you to do is shelve alarms. So I always like calling it the snooze button on alarm. So you could say, I don't want to see this alarm for the next 6 hours because I'm doing maintenance on the equipment or something like that. And you can either set it based on time, or you can also do a manual unshelf when anything's ready. So again, this is something coming in the 2026 release. So we'll definitely have more information on this as we move forward. One other capability that is really more of really handy for a lot of different use cases, especially nowadays with more and more web content. We used to have the old Internet Explorer ActiveX control. We have now created a new Chromium web control that works with HTML5 content. And really what this lets you do is now put inside your Cimplicity screen, and this is actually also relevant for iFix. So this control was done with both iFix and Cimplicity in mind. You can now put a URL for any web content that you want. So examples could be if you're integrating in with the maintenance system and you want to say, hey, I want to open up web content that's going to show the maintenance record on this piece of equipment, or it could even be for things like leveraging our Operations Hub. If you are looking at Operations Hub and want to use the new trending or the new alarm cards and things that are all HTML5 based, this will also let you now put that in your iFix or Cimplicity screens as well. And it does let you pass parameters. So when you create this control on your screen, you can basically pass the parameters to go to a specific URL and how you want it to behave within the browser, you know, with borders, without borders, all that kind of stuff. So again, really powerful for really extending the information you can provide your operators in your standard iFix or Cimplicity screens. So I'm going to pause there, and then if there's any questions from the audience. I heard a beep. Oh, well, you got someone in the lobby. I wasn't sure if there's a chat there. Let me see here. No questions. Then I'll move on to the iFix. So again, like Cimplicity, iFix, we do have the release coming in the summer. We've put a lot of emphasis with this iFix release really on the overall, you know, user experience, from everything from when you install the product to how you configure the product has been updated, and I have some sample screens for that as well. So really trying to you know, we use the word modernization, but it's really, you know, evolving kind of how you interact with the product as you do the configuration, install it, etc. So there is a bit of a new UI here to get used to. The old workspace is still there, but you know, you can actually now start leveraging the new interface more completely. And we have as part of this, and I think I have it on the screens coming up, even things like the SU configuration, everything's now available within the new configuration environment. There's also been continued work on some of the performance, and I won't get into a lot of the details, but you know, we're able to do things like continue to improve the picture performance, as well as something that was impacting, you know, the design. And I'll let Priya go into the details if I get something wrong here, but basically, we used to have a single path for the alarms and data, and we've created multiple paths to really improve the performance of the overall system, both for, you know, if there's a lot of alarms in the system, or you've got a lot of more, I'll call them lots more data on the screens and things like that. It just does perform way better. And I don't have the numbers here. I don't think. Priya, if you're on, I don't know if I know there's a percentage number we've been using on this, but it's pretty significant in performance.
Yes, there is definitely a 10x improvement. So.
Yeah. The other thing that's also been added is Python, and this is for the EDA toolkit. So basically now you can leverage the Python language. We've got APIs that can work with iFix on the EDA at the back end to that you can use Python scripts to interact with it. And again, the idea here that there is I know VBA is still used a lot, but you know, Python definitely is the leader, I'll say, in scripting capability and languages that are used. So this has definitely been a welcome addition from you know, based on working with several of our customers. I mentioned the Chromium control that I talked about in Cimplicity. Same one is now available for iFix as well. So again, you can do things to pull in any web content, as well as, of course, Operations Hub. You can start using some of those tools within your iFix screens. And then again, centralization. This just helps with a lot of the managing your overall system generally. And one I know that was done in last release that some people haven't noticed is you can actually start managing your licenses centrally as well. So just something to, again, you can look at all the different things we're doing just to try to help make managing your systems from a central location a lot easier. I talked a little bit about the new user experience. So this is just some of the examples. We've simplified the installation. It takes a lot less time now to even just get the install. If you are installing a new system or upgrading, just lets it go a lot faster than it has in the past. And then, as I mentioned, we now do have a very complete web-based configuration experience. You don't have to go to Workspace. Still there, but everything is now available within the new web environment as well. And there's another example of the new iFix Studio here. But in terms of, here now you can start looking at it at a project basis. There's a new environment where you can get at the help and some help videos and things a lot more easily. So you can get up and running with the new system and new design a lot more quickly. You can start getting things like project history on your projects and things like that. So again, without getting into super detail, we'll definitely have some detailed webinars that are coming up as we get closer to release as well that you can join. But you'll definitely see a big improvement, new look and feel, all that type of stuff with iFix as part of our continued journey. And we've got some really exciting stuff that's going to come. We're going to be announcing next month, and as well just on kind of some more of the future capabilities that we'll share at the next event. And here's some more examples of just some of the new displays around the iFix Studio, the node manager that we talked about. Just again, you can kind of see how it is now quite a different look and feel compared to the traditional workspace. But the team did spend a lot of time making sure it was looking at the user experience and making sure it was a lot more productive as well. One other thing that is coming with in the new iFix release, there will be a new sample system that leverages high performance graphics. This is a design that we've worked on internally with some of our, when we were part of the GE Vernova family with our power division to come up with new types of widgets and displays. And what we'll be doing is having a new sample system that does come with iFix, and you can actually then leverage these new dynamos or leverage some of the examples we have in there to incorporate into your design as well. But the idea is just new look and feel that really helps provide that high performance, simplified interface where it's sort of our variation of ISA 101, where we keep everything simple and make sure the colors matter and issues pop, like you can see the red where the alarm is in this case. So again, something you can take advantage of when we release and hopefully use it as a good starting point if you are down that journey of high performance, which I know a lot of our customers are. We do also have an Operations Hub update as well coming up. So again, all these are coming out as a portfolio release sometime in the summer here. We've added some runtime distribution capabilities, some templatized faceplates where you can just configure it rather than actually design it. Again, just sort of using these to help, number one, reuse components and screens within Operations Hub across, where you can actually change the tag, things like that dynamically, so that, similar to what you're doing with the group tags in iFix as an example. a little more robust kind of from, you know, just the interface that we do with the HTML5 here. The faceplates, again, so that you can configure rather than having to create new designs all the time. It uses some of that similar capability. There's also new event-based scripting. So it had pull-based scripting previously. What the event-based does now is based on any kind of trigger, you can trigger a script as well that runs on Operations Hub as well, just to provide more robust visualization, depending on making it more condition-based, I guess you could say. And then the ability, and we've migrated the queries in Mimic Mansion as well to the new designer. So again, these are just some of the things to look forward to. Again, the event-based scripting, just to kind of show a bit about what it looks like. You know, so again, now the scripts can be dynamic versus polling, you know, based on a specific condition and things like that. The tag string substitution, again, to help with to make it so you can reuse screens more robustly than you've been in the past. And the pop-ups again, so it's quick and easy, you know, just through a configuration, creating a pop-up screen, you know, and make that pop-up screen context-based based on when you're clicking on a specific device and things like that. So some of these things were possible before, we just made them a lot easier. And this is just based on the feedback we've gotten as we continue to evolve our Operations Hub HTML5 side of things. And one last thing I kind of wanted to touch on is, and this is, you'll hear more about this moving forward. We do have a new licensing model that's available. And basically what we did is we took a step back and looked at systems overall, you know, and looked at it more from HMI is more than just HMI SCADA now. Pretty much everyone that's using HMI SCADA uses historical data as an example. So data becomes even more important. And then the other kind of piece that's obviously, you know, in the, you know, very popular, at least people are starting to look at it more and how it can help, is looking at AI and ML. And the idea here is that, you know, HMI SCADA gets the real-time data, Historian stores that data, and really in order to do any kind of machine learning capabilities and things like that, you do need the data, right? That's the foundation of how you get your insights and things like that. So what we've done is we've married our Historian, our SCADA, so that could be Cimplicity or iFix. Historian, Operations Hub is sort of the common visualization that cuts across these solutions, and our C-Sense Analytics. And what we've done is we've called it Proficy SCADA Ultimate. And the idea is that with one part number, you're going to get all these pieces. And what we've done is we've taken all these components and put them together. And we've really simplified even just how we go to market and how we price it, where it's really just based on how many total tags do you want. And we're including a pretty good, healthy set of clients as well. So really, it almost comes down to one part number, and you get all the parts and pieces you need for the system. And you know, really, the idea here is this set of tags, you just buy a total number and you can decide how many are SCADA, how many are Historian. You can switch them at any time and that type of thing. As well as the clients, you're going to just get a total number of clients, and you can say, I want them all thick, I want them all thin, I want 10 thick, you know, 20 thin, whatever. You have the flexibility to decide how that works on that. And just sort of to show how it looks like there is, you know, this is just an example where, hey, I bought 100,000 tags and I put 30,000 on one SCADA, 10,000 on a Historian, another 40,000 SCADA, another 10,000 on Historian, you know, 3,000 on the analytics. So the idea is that you're getting your system and you decide how you want to distribute this. So some people have, you know, might have 10 small systems and others might centralize their SCADA. So either way, the pricing's the same. You just decide how you want to distribute this out. So again, this is very new. It's available. It is available as on a subscription only basis. And if there's any interest, I just encourage you to talk to your representative or G salesperson that you work with. And really what we found is as you start looking at your acceleration plans and renewing, it's a good time to say, hey, does this make sense for me? So again, if this does sound like something that makes sense, again, contact your representative on that. And with that, I'll pause here. I know I kind of went through a lot of information quickly. If there's any questions, feel free to, I'll take a pause here, and you can either unmute and ask or throw it in the chat as well. Any thoughts or questions? Guess we have a quiet group today, but that's all right. Hopefully it makes sense. And again, if any of this information, feel free to reach out to any of our channel partners, sales. If you've got a CSM, just reach out if I piqued any interest, and we can definitely get you more information if needed. With that, I am going to pass it over to Craig. And Craig, I'll let you just grab the share and work with that as you go.
All right, can everyone see my screen?
I can. You're not in presentation mode, or now you are.
Yep.
There you go.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Craig Brubaker. I'm the SCADA Administrator at Orange County Utilities here in sunny Orlando, Florida. I have a presentation to share, and I'm going to try to move quickly through it to respect everyone's time. But this was a presentation that I gave at the previous ARC Industry Leadership Forum the previous year. Actually, this year's forum focused a lot on AI, so I actually do have some stuff on AI as well. But what I'm going to focus on is really our system and the way that we're using iFix and Historian. Again, my name is Craig Brubaker. Just some information about me. I have a lot of pets. I don't have any kids. I played college football, and I'm an Orlando Magic fan who, they're actually doing pretty well right now against Detroit. So just to tell you about our system, Orange County, we cover the surrounding Orlando area. We don't actually cover the city itself. That would be OUC, Orlando Utilities Commission. We're actually OCU, Orange County Utilities, and we also don't cover some of the other cities in the area like Winter Park, Winter Garden, and so forth. But we are, if you think about it, we're a pretty large area for a public water utility, and we have quite a few customers, and that we keep getting more customers every year. This is a really big growth area. It's come a long way, even since I've been working at Orange County for the last 17 years. But if you go 17 years prior than that, it's really kind of exploded population-wise. So yeah, this talk was focused on distributed systems, centralization, and really what I'm going to show is the ways that we're using iFix and Historian software to help manage that. I'm going to give some recommendations, but I'll try to move quickly through that. And then I'm also going to talk about some ways that we're integrating the software. And if we have any time, I'll touch on some ways that you can use AI in such a system. So just conceptual slide here talking about what is a distributed SCADA network. You think it's the entire system, all the way from the field devices, the small modular computers, the PLCs that actually control the field devices, all the way up to view clients, and then into your SCADA system, your iFix nodes, kind of trying to manage all this information and present it in one centralized control center. Why would you want to centralize? Because it's a pretty massive system, and you don't want to create islands and have all these different systems. You can save a lot of man hours by having a centralized system. You can increase your efficiency. It really has a lot of benefits. You can think about your networking and your security and try to do everything the same way, and you scale it up, as you grow. And just some recommendations here. If you look, there's a couple standards that I've listed, and the ANSI ISA for security. A good place to start would be the AWWA cybersecurity tool, and for instance, something that helps us a lot with the visualization that iFix provides is that we're under a requirement for 4-log disinfection for the groundwater rule. And by having the continuous monitoring, we're able to drastically reduce the number of back-to well samples that we need to take. So if you think about the Proficy software, there's really two pieces that I'm talking about. There's iFix, which is dealing with real-time data and control. And then there's Proficy Historian, which has, stored that data for later review. And we use the historical data a lot in trending, for reports, and for troubleshooting issues. So this is just to give you a map, and I've censored a lot of the information, but this is actually a SCADA screen where we have our various facilities laid out in the county and with some pressure data. And this is actually iFix. This is our main navigation. At the top of the screen here, we have actually like a floating navigation bar. This is done with VB scripting. And when they click on the plants, they get this drop down and they can click on the various plants. We have over 20 smaller plants and 4 regional plants, which are the larger ones. So those are listed at the top, and we're split into different sections. In the past, the different sections were actually different distribution systems, but now they've started to be integrated as far as being able to pump, from the west to the south and so forth. But there is some scripting even in this navigation to where if we were to lose communications at any of the individual plants, the labels would turn red, indicating, hey, there's some sort of problem. You might need to call somebody out to troubleshoot the communications. So this is one of those small plants. If you look back here, this would be in the south. Hunters Creek. This is one of the smaller plants, and this is typical of a 2 to 3 MGD facility where we have wells on the left. We're going with a left to right flow, conceptual flow through the plant. This isn't the exact pipe work, but it's conceptually consistent with the treatment. So we have wells pulling groundwater going into GSTs. There's some pre-chlorination happening. There's aeration trays on the top of the GSTs. And then from the GSTs, we have high service pumps and they're going out to distribution system, trying to maintain a certain PSI. And we're also looking at the 4-log chlorine residual. That's for that 4-log rule, the groundwater rule I was talking about earlier. And we're trying to maintain a certain chlorine residual and a certain detention time. They'll say it's like a contact time in order to provide that 4-log of disinfection. And then for these smaller plants, we also have a number of more navigation buttons at the bottom, and I'll show you what some of those look like. So if you were to click, for instance, on the high service pump sequence down here, it would take you to this window, a little pop-up window. And here what we have is we have a free-form matrix. It's top to down, and it's free form, so it's up to the operators to actually put progressively more pumps on. If you weren't paying attention, you could have all the pumps on stage 1 and then nothing on stage 2, and that wouldn't be really that effective. But it's the controls here are using the pressure as the control set point. So there's a PID set point for the pressure. The pressure right now is 60. The PID set point 65. So the PID output is maxed out at 100, and it's going to stay there, pump as hard as it can. If the pressure continues to drop below 52, then after a time delay, it's going to go to the next stage, which would bring another pump on. So that's kind of the way our controls are set up. And if you look at, I should have mentioned our color scheme. We're going red is run and green is ready to run. There's also yellow, which is faulted. Now, this isn't exactly high performance HMI, but it is more of a maintenance person perspective, because you're thinking, okay, red is hot, so red is kind of a warning. We are trying to use a lot of grayscale and a lot of dials. If you look at the GST, it's kind of a dial, yeah, for historical reasons, we haven't fully adapted to the new standard. Although seeing those widgets and things that Gimme presented, those looked very useful. So what we could do is integrate some of those dynamos into our pop-up screens, rather than revamping the entire system, and that would be kind of our evolution. So also on that screen, there was a button for the well sequence, similar to the high service pump, but now it's using the GST level as a control set point. And then there's the bleach system, there's bleach tanks, bulk tanks, there's pre-chlorination, post-chlorination. The post-chlorination, there's actually a toggle between being flow paste versus being compound, which is using the actual residual as a set point and adjusting accordingly. And then there's also a generator and power monitoring screen, where at this plant, let's see, we didn't have enough capacity on the generator to run all the equipment. So there's some enabling and disabling various equipment when the generator is running. There's the main power here, and then there power monitor down here for the generator as well. Okay, so that was a lot, but that kind of gives you an overview of the way most of our screens are laid out from a controls perspective. Here's a screen monitoring fiber communications at one of the larger facilities. So the regional facilities, they typically have a fiber ring. It's a self-healing ring, and although everything is shown as a big circle here, the way this is actually laid out is more like on the plant is more like a figure 8. But this is a valuable troubleshooting screen for us, because the way the fiber works, if there's any breaks in the fiber, anything between those two areas would potentially go dark. And this actually is animating from tags that are built into the system. So if at well 6 here we lost communication, this would turn red. And then if over here at well 3 that was also red, then we would also lose well 5, because that's in between, but then we'd have complete communication all the way around. So when the guys are responding to issues, they know, okay, red starts here, red starts there. Let's start at this building first, and then let's go to that building. And hopefully if we resolve those two problems, then the things in the middle will get resolved. So this is very helpful, having a monitoring screens like this, because in the middle of the night, you don't want to have to drive around to every single building in your plant if it's a rather large plant. With this, the SCADA operators in the control room are able to communicate to the people responding and say, hey, start here and start there. And that's very helpful, in the middle of the night. Okay, so here we have, it's like a one-line diagram, but it's built into our SCADA system. So we have all our power monitoring here at the Southern Regional Plant, and you can kind of see that we have a utility feed here, utility feed there. You can see numbers, so that means there's, you can see voltage, so that means there's power. And the breakers here are red, going down to all the way down to the wells here, and on the other side, green is closed, so all the way down here. So we've got the two utility feeds feeding different parts of the plant. But this could be, if the generators were running and the utility was gone. So then, based on the position of these breakers, you could route the power one way or another. Okay, so here's our alarm summary screen. And this is kind of a stock object in iFix, but we have actually added alarm shelving. And unfortunately, I don't have that displayed here. So in the newer version of our screen, we have another column for whether or not. Oh no, actually, I do have whether it's shelved. Okay, so we have another column for whether it's shelved or not, and then we have another little button down here showing just the shelved alarms, because you shelve alarm, you don't want to forget about it entirely. So we have some filtering going on so that the operators can look, okay, what did I shelve? Because typically what they're shelving is things that are out of service for maintenance. So they don't want to get nagged by an alarm while it's being worked on. So some other features we have built into this that are kind of on top of the stock object. We have filter buttons down here so that operators can look at just the west section or just the south section and so forth. And then there's numbers kind of accumulating all the alarms here for the various sections to help them manage, our rather large system. And then we have, if you click on an alarm and then hit alarm info, we have a little pop-up with additional information about that tag. That's typical to what you would see on the tag status window that's also built into iFix. So that kind of helps the operators understand, okay, what is the status when it's in an alarm? What's the status when it's not in an alarm? And if you're a programmer, what's the address for that? So let's move on. And okay, also from the alarm summary, so this is like your current alarms. What about alarms that happened in the past? Well, we do have a button down here for the alarm log viewer. iFix has alarm logging built into it where all the alarms get put into a log file. It's actually like a text file. But we wanted to make that visible to our operators. So in the VB, we built this alarm log viewer, and you can even go from one server to the next and look at the logs from one server to the next. Now, as long as comms are up, those log files should be synchronized. But sometimes if maybe comm was down, you might not get an alarm. It might have missed the synchronization. And there's all kinds of filtering. You can look at dates. You can do an export to CSV. You can print it out. So we built a lot into this because it's very useful for troubleshooting. And then, of course, we have trending. We have a lot of stock trends that have been built, and we have so many trends that we have a lot of filter buttons to be able to make. Let's say, I just want to look at the southwestern trends. So here we have, a collection. Actually, what I did here was I searched. So we have a little button down here where you can search for a term. And I searched for 4log. So if you're interested in just 4log trends, then you get it in this little drop down. It populates it with all of our 4log trends. Or you could have clicked on the west. You see all the plants in the west or the south and so forth. And you can go forward and backwards, and you can even create your own custom trends with this screen. That's built into iFix. But it's nice to have a lot of stock things so the operators don't have to hunt and peck for what they need for troubleshooting. Okay, so quickly, I'm going to try to talk about some of the things we've integrated into iFix. So here we're actually using the older web browser control. This is the Internet Explorer version of the web browser control. And this does work well for static pages and for some older web pages, but it does not work for anything that requires HTML5. So if we wanted to use web pages that might be coming from some newer smart devices that require HTML5, then we definitely need to use the newer web browser control. But this really opens up your system. Opening up your system to web pages, would allow a lot of integration. You could have another system. It could be maybe an electronic logbook, that you could have integrated right into your iFix. And we do use the environment protection. So we run our clients like little kiosk, so we don't want to have them we don't want the operators to have direct access to the operating system. So we really have things locked down as much as possible, but then how do you bring some stuff back? So, if you want them to be able to use like the calculator or a notepad or something, there's different ways in iFix with the scripting that you can bring that in. Well, if you have some web pages, this web browser control is pretty handy for bringing in information that you might already have. This is another use of the web browser control. So we're using Excel Reporter for our reporting that gets the historical data and throws it into Excel sheets. Well, a feature in Excel Reporter is you can save those reports as static HTML files. And now that you have static HTML, you can use the web browser control to actually display that information directly in iFix. Here we have a communication testing screen. So again, in the VB scripting, we're actually pinging both the router and the PLC at our various facilities, and that kind of helps troubleshoot what's going on in terms of the communications. So this is a handy screen that the operators can use. And then we also have some information. If they were to click on accounts or circuit IDs, they would quickly get a little pop-up with a PDF essentially of what the various circuit IDs and so forth are, or whether it's serviced by AT&T or Lumen or another ISP. So here we have another control screen for monitoring the system, and this is actually from monitoring like the redundancy that we have in our system. So we have, like I said, we have various sections, but each section we generally have a pair of SCADA servers. So these are the I/O servers. So for the East facility, we have a server called Eastern S1 and a server called Eastern S2. For all of our smaller remote plants, it's ER2 SCADA is the logical node pair, and the servers are S4 and S3. And then we also have stuff for the West and the South, same idea, logical pairs. But then the question is, okay, which of the pair of servers is actually the active one? And is the standby actually available? Well, this monitoring screen lets you know that, and it also allows you to switch straight from iFix which one is in control. So you might have a problem on a server. Now, this doesn't happen as much now that we're fully virtualized. Actually, our system is a lot more robust with the virtualization that we've added. But this gives the operator the chance to be able to switch to another data source, same information, but a different server serving the same information that maybe it's not, maybe the other one's messed up, so maybe try the other one. So with clicking these buttons, they're able to do that. And this screen, we have monitoring up here of the SCADA nodes. We have monitoring of actually individual view clients, what an individual view client is actually looking at for their source of data. And we even have down here with the historian SDK, we have similar monitoring for our historical data collectors. This one I mentioned, it requires VB integration with the historian SDK, but this other stuff up here is all kind of baked into iFix. And what you want to look for is the NSD tags and the SCADA sync tags. That's how this VB scripting is built. So I'm kind of running out of time, but just to quickly show you, we also have some PDFs built into our iFix. And yeah, I'm going to skip past this. And I made it to AI. So if anyone's interested, just real quick, here's a prompt where I'm actually prompting Gemini. And I know about this Proficy Historian Interactive SQL. So you can actually run SQL queries against Historian using this tool. And I wanted to ask kind of an analytical question about the system. And but maybe I need some help writing that code, writing that SQL code. So if you actually take this as your prompt, then Gemini, I did this about earlier this year, Gemini gave me this result, and it actually gave me this code, which you can use with the tool. And and it's even giving some good some tips on where you could go wrong. So one of the great things about AI is it helps you get started. So if you didn't know where to start, if you didn't want to learn an entire programming language, well, this could kind of help make you dangerous enough to see if this is something you want to continue, kind of prototype an analytical type question, and maybe you could use that further in your system. And then here's another example of using AI, but now I'm asking Claude about how to do some programming controlling Windows in from iFix. So if you were integrating tightly with the Windows operating system, you could use this Windows library, user32 DLL, and this is actually the code that Claude was giving me for how to control windowing And that's everything I got. I'm going to stop the share. And I'll hand it back over to the experts.
Well, I think you're the expert on this one, but yeah, I think what I want to do here is if anyone on the call has questions for Craig, just in terms of anything you saw there, how he used the AI, that type of thing. We'll leave it open for a few seconds here to see if any of our customers, partners, or even if our own staff, I guess, has any specific questions for Craig.
Yeah, I also put my email in the chat in case you have any questions you want to ask me
Thanks,
directly.
Craig. Yeah.
Craig, I'll go first. It's a cool application that you built and sounds pretty robust for any operator who's trying to work with your application. On an average, how many number of tags do you have on your SCADAs?
We have actually about 40,000 tags.
Per SCADA pair?
Not per pair. Per pair, about closer to 10,000.
Okay. But all across all your SCADAs, you have roughly around 40,000 tags.
Yes, and we also have each smaller plant is its own little independent SCADA node. So it has its own little historian just for that plant. And that might only be 1,000 tags at a small plant. But our entire centralized system, what we call remote SCADA, you could think of it, one way or the other. It's kind of like upload and download. Are you uploading to or download? So what we call remote SCADA is our central control system. But then what we call local SCADA is those smaller plants just at that one facility. And, we have with 20 of those or so, each one having between 500 and 1,000 tags. If you do the math, we actually we are licensed for quite a few tags if you think about both remote and local SCADA. And then we have some redundancy as well with our historian, where we're using the aggregate historian through the historian distributor, and we actually have two main historians that are sending through the distributor historical tag information to a aggregate historian, which is kind of combining everything.
Great, thank you. And I hope you're leveraging the TCP/IP based failover mechanism in your environments.
Yes, we are, and I think actually that changed when we did our virtualization overhaul, and I think that has helped communications quite a bit versus the older
the UDP base where you had to be physically
UDP, yes, UDP, and the UDP is fast and efficient and everything, but I think it can drop some packets and things. So the TCP is a little bit more robust.
I see there's a question in the chat window.
Yeah, the question was, what are operators using when on call? He indicates that they're using web space and having issues with the graphics, which, by the way, we should probably have a separate discussion on. But yeah, I guess curious what you're using there, Craig, or what are the operators using?
So we actually have 24/7 manned SCADA control room. So we do also have on-call supervisors, on-call electricians, and even maintenance people now, but they're all kind of blind to the system because for security reasons, we don't have any remote, at least outside of the OT network monitoring. So they're calling the main SCADA control center, and who does have complete visibility. But outside of that, there is no visibility for security reasons.
Yeah, and for the web space issue, I don't know if there's anything you know about their pre, otherwise we can get them to get a case in or something on that.
Yeah, I definitely want to double click into that. So if you can have a support case created, what is the exact issue that they're facing and what functionality that they're missing because of scaling issues that are being described here. So I would like to know and get in touch with support team to further analyze this situation.
Any other questions on?
Yes, hello.
Craig?
Thank you for your answer.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say you come off mute and if you have anything to add anyway, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, I just have a quick question more for Craig. So I'm part of Eastern Municipal Water District. So we're out in Southern California. I work at one of the wastewater plants. We have 4 wastewater plants in the district, and that's our platform. We're using iFix 2022 right now. How do you go about, for example, have you been upgrading the system every time a new version comes out, or do you stick to just one for right now?
Yeah, so we like to stay a version or 2 behind. We're using iFix 2023 right now, and we upgraded to that when we did our big virtualization project, which was about right around 2023. So yeah, we usually like to stay a little behind, but then apply all the workspace sims and things as they become available. And we kind of do big updates all at once, other than those sims, rather than try to always go to the latest version.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, that's another question that I also have on mind for all our customers is that, how do you plan your upgrades? Because definitely iFix has gotten better. You have seen the presentation from Jimmy where we definitely have improved the performance right from the SCADA front all the way to the HMI side, and our integrations and interactions with Historian also has improved. So definitely as an engineering team, we really recommend you all to come to the latest versions of iFix. But what's your typical upgrade cycle? Like when you hear about a new version of iFix being available, how do you plan the upgrades? And if you're committing yourself to upgrade your plans, what's your typical planning process is when you have to upgrade these softwares? Like I know Craig went to this virtualization effort where, that gives them a better control of how they plan their implementations with respect to virtual machines, deployment of the software, and, have a series of steps defined so that the system is well established. So I want to hear more from other users, especially around their upgrade plans.
I was going to say this is a good transition into the to some of the next, which is where we do want to start getting some feedback from customers. If you got any questions on iFix, iFix Priya and the team is available. And then I also had another topic, but maybe we'll just start with that. So I'll let anyone on the call who wants to give Priya some input on that speak up. Or
if I could
you feel like it. Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you start, Craig. Yeah.
Yeah, if I could touch base. Yeah, so one thing I know we will do as we license, with our license renewal schedule, we'll have access to the latest version as we renew. So we will definitely be testing the latest version and trying to leverage some of those newer features. By default, we'll be getting the efficiency improvements, but also some of those dynamos would be nice to integrate. But we'll be testing that. Now with the virtualization, we can fully test that independent of our system. And once we see the value in our testing, then we'll go ahead and roll out the update all at once. So now that with the virtualization, we'll probably be updating a little quicker than we have in the past. Before we updated to 2023, we were still on iFix 5.8. So we waited quite a while. We didn't go to 6 or anything. We went right from 5.8 to 2023.
Quite a bit of time, yeah, for sure. I guess it speaks to the stability of that, if nothing else. But yeah.
Stability, and we were way behind on our hardware.
Okay.
So we were still running like Dell servers with Windows 7 Pro. So we did a pretty massive upgrade, and that was a great chance to upgrade our software as well.
If there's any other utilities or anyone else who wants to comment, or if and what they're doing for practices, you can go ahead and speak up as well.
Well, hey, this is Sam Hindman. I'm in the city of Boulder. We're also on version 2023, and we had an extended plant shutdown, one of our plants in early 2024, so we took the opportunity to do that upgrade then. We're actually looking to upgrade now to version 2024, and the driver for that is our IT department wants to upgrade our operating systems to Windows Server 2025. So for compatibility reasons, we want to be on iFix 2024 for that. And then the other issue we're running into that though is web space. So my understanding is that there's not existing a version of web space that's compatible with Windows Server 2025. And so we're kind of, eager to hear when, the update on that is going to come out.
For
Yeah.
web space, yeah, I don't know if you have a date. I know that we're working towards it, or I think Alec might be on the call. He may be able to answer as well.
Yes, definitely for this iFix 2026 release, we are working towards incorporating a new web space that can support these operating systems. That work is in progress right now.
So I guess if you're, I guess we'll have to, we'll kind of transition this to the Ask the Expert iFix, but so that would mean he'd have to, would it work with the older version or would it require the 2026 iFix, Priya? Just to provide some clarity maybe for.
You mean to say to get the latest web space? Will the latest web space work with older versions of iFix or?
Yeah, that's, I'm just sort of, I'm assuming that might be a follow-on question for Sam here, so.
Yeah. I mean, we will definitely look into the backwards compatibility because there are no hard ties on how web space behaves with the version of iFix. So if you have iFix 2023 on your plans and you still want to put the newer web space, it should work.
Okay. I guess the answer is it should be around summer again, right? I don't know if we have a specific date yet, but
yes, correct.
Towards that.
Yep.
That is a helpful follow-up. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'll. One of the things I also want to do is just also have, and again, if there's any, we've got several of our representatives from the iFix team on this month's call. So if there's anything, just how do I do this? Does iFix do that? That kind of thing. If you've got any questions there, just let us know and our team will try and help as well. So maybe one of the things I wanted to do was also just sort of do, and I'll just, and this is a question I kind of have for Craig and hopefully any of the other utilities on the call, AI and analytics. I mean, obviously, Craig, you're leveraging Gemini and Claude as an example in your environment. It's some of the things that we're looking at working towards, and like I said, we'll be doing some announcements in the next month or so on just on some of these concepts with our product lines. But are there specific, you're using Claude and Gemini in this case. I mean, are there specific things you had to deal with even from a security and concerns perspective? I know, just from speaking with other customers, as soon as they hear AI, it's like, whoa, we're not doing AI in our plant kind of thing. So I'm just curious if you had any obstacles you had to get through and how you got through them in that regard.
Right. So we're not really using AI in any big way with real data.
Okay.
We do have access to, with our work, Microsoft Office 365. So that does give access to some AI, and I would have to consult with our IT department a little bit.
Okay.
But I know that the way that Gemini works in Google Workspace, for instance, is you can set up Gemini such that none of the data is used for training. So there are ways to use these platforms, even with sensitive, business data. So I imagine that our IT department would greenlight some use of what's the Microsoft one again? Sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
I know I'm forgetting it now. I know I get it popped up in my face every day, it seems. But
we also have a project moving towards Power BI, and we've been using Power BI with Maximo data. So you use under the Microsoft family, that opens it up potentially to once you have data in Power BI, to ask AI some questions about that data and get some actual AI results, but without necessarily sharing that to training or being open to the greater businesses to potentially lose some trade secrets or something. So we are doing some data exports from Historian and starting to bring actual production data into Power BI. So that's an ongoing project we have right now. So that'll be interesting to see how that integrates with AI, and if we give that data and the AI capabilities to our managers and our operators, what kind of questions could they be querying? From a low tech sophistication required, they can ask questions like, how much does this plant flow normally on the weekends, sort of thing. So yeah, I see a lot of power there with AI, but I also see power even with the help system in iFix, to have a little bit of AI built into, being able to just kind of leverage the features that are already there. Because if you think about it, iFix has been around for a very long time, and there's a lot of features that are built into it, but it can be difficult to just Google the web for how you want to approach it, or maybe look at a large document like the automation reference to figure out how to do something. So with AI built into the platform with access to those help documents, I think that could add a lot of value for customers, especially those that haven't been using it for a long time.
I'm hoping Kathleen caught that if she's still on the call. But yeah, no, that's great input, Craig. Yeah, because I mean, like I mentioned, I mean, I know we've even had, and then this might be what you're saying in terms of the data, you're not really providing business data. I know we had one of our customers that was looking at CSense, went to purchase it, and it got blocked because, oh my God, there's AI, and where's the data going and all that stuff. So, whereas in that case, it's actually just working off your own data. So I think that's probably the key, is not making sure data doesn't get to public is probably and I don't know if anyone else on the call, any of our other utilities have looked into AI, or if there's any comments or thoughts you'd like to add on that. But yeah, that's definitely been at least it's just, you hear AI and it's the big concern is, where's my data going? And all that kind of stuff. But definitely if you are looking at something like our CSense that we're including in the SCADA Ultimate, that works off only your data. You can't point it to the web and to the world type of thing. It's just local and gets insights out of your own data in that regard. And I think there's options even for some of the AI tools to not go external. So I assume that's kind of what you've done there.
Yeah, AI does scare people when they're thinking about security, but another one that scares people is just saying anything about the web. So you have the web browser control in iFix and Cimplicity, I believe. But just because it's a web browser doesn't mean you're actually browsing the web. You could have local. So there's ways to use these tools in a local fashion that would be more comfortable to utility users, but you really need to assure us that that is happening and that it's not being used for external training or being shared and made public.
Yeah, and I mean, and maybe Priya, that's something we think about or look at. I don't know if it's something we can help protect, or although I know usually customer's own firewalls that might prevent that from going out anyway. But
Correct. Your
if you're
internal
trying to hit
intranet.
it, yeah, typically, but yeah.
Yeah, again, the browser control is there to help you, get to these web contents, right? So they are hosted within your intranet. You're not going out into the public domain to fetch the information. Well, the control allows you, like, you just provide a URL, and if that URL is reachable from your, local networks, it'll display the content. But as Jimmy pointed out, right, this is more to help you build your applications to talk to your internal web servers, especially as Craig pointed out too, that nowadays you are getting these smart devices that actually hold some of the critical device information, maybe like a manual, right? That you want to troubleshoot the device and you want to know more about what the vendor has provided with respect to the device handling and all that. You want to read up that information. So make it more easily available for the operators for a quick turnaround, instead of, hey, I'm an operator, I don't know what this device is doing. I'm going to call my supervisor and wait in line and get the data, analyze the steps to troubleshoot and all that. So it's to be more self-reliant and be aware.
Yeah, makes sense. Any other thoughts on, or if there's any other questions on iFix, or any other thoughts on, at least maybe if anyone wants to share any thoughts on how they're looking at AI, or being able to leverage that in the future, we'd love to hear about it. Like I said, we're kind of going down that path, and we'll be able to talk a bit more about it in a month or so. But just sort of any concerns, thoughts, because when I look at it, at least myself, with what's going on in the world, and it's definitely the way things are going. So the question then becomes, how can we leverage it to be more productive, and that type of thing. And obviously, while keeping it secure and keeping your data safe and things like that. So those are always considerations. So if there's anyone with any thoughts, you can speak out, speak up, send a message. If you want to talk about any of these topics in the future as well with us, please feel free to contact your representative, and we can set something up for sure as well. So I'll give it sort of a last call. Otherwise, thank everyone for joining. Thank Craig for his insights in his presentation. I think that was great. Thanks, Craig. And we will probably be having another one of these events in about 3 months. Typically, we do them quarterly. I know we had a bit of a gap there while some things were changing, but we'll try to send out early notice on the next one, and we'll have another customer that we've got that'll talk about some things they're doing as well. So we try to make sure we have customers that can share kind of what they're doing, and hopefully provide examples for the rest of our customer community as well.
Absolutely. I think right now we're slated to have the next session in July, but as Jimmy said, we'll make sure everyone is notified well in advance before we once we get the date set.
So we thank this opportunity, Jimmy, that we love to see our users of our product, and talk to them in person, address their concerns in these forums. And we definitely encourage you all to come to the newer versions of iFix for its capabilities, and definitely for performance gains. So please do plan for upgrading to newer version of iFix whenever you get a chance. Yeah, as Craig mentioned, that they have some test systems where they can deploy the newer software and see their application working in action. So if you have the ability to do so, please avail the opportunity to get the new version of the software.
Yeah, and I think obviously you're entitled to that new version if you are on your acceleration plan. And I don't have the details myself, but there's also, if you talk to your whoever you're working with from a sales perspective, you do get access to temporary demo licenses if you want to stage it, before you make that switch as well. So reach out on that as well if it's something you're interested in doing. All right, well, thanks everyone. And again, thanks to Craig and Priya. Thank you for joining this session and providing some of your input as well. So we look forward to everyone joining at the next one, and hope everyone has a great day.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining. See you next time.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.